Well, last night, as we all discovered, President Obama brought the country the news it's been waiting for 10 years. Osama Bin Laden, the maniacal mass murderer, religious fanatic responsible for the tragedies that took place here and at the Pentagon. And on Flight 93, he is dead, killed by American Navy SEALs who staged a daring raid on a mansion where he was living in Pakistan. Tonight, the president spoke again, this time to a bipartisan crowd in Washington, a city that has lately seemed poisoned by partisan venom. And he hailed a feeling of national unity that is surprisingly familiar.
You know, I think we experienced the same sense of unity that prevailed on 9/11. We were reminded again that there is a pride in what this nation stands for and what we can achieve that runs far deeper than party, far deeper than politics.
One of the most captivating, most fascinating threads of this story is how American spies tracked their man to that compound, how they confirmed as best they could that it was really him, and how the decision was made to attack, not with an airstrike as initially proposed, but with a brazen commando mission in which Navy SEALs would descend from the sky and bodily remove the target, dead or alive. In the dead dark of an almost moonless Pakistani night, the attack came down. It lasted just 40 minutes, but local eyewitnesses will never forget it.
I heard heavy gunfire at around 1 a.m. in the morning last night, and it was followed by a huge blast.
By morning's light, the mysterious compound in this pleasant hill town stood silent and aloof. Inside, seen in this exclusive video obtained by ABC News, the bloody evidence made clear what happened here, a daring, lethal, brilliant operation. And in a moment that will help to define his presidency, at 11:36 p.m. last night, President Obama confirmed the historic news.
The United States has conducted an operation that killed Osama Bin Laden, the leader of Al-Qaeda.
The killing of Osama Bin Laden was the culmination of years of hard work by thousands of people. But this operation began last August. That month, U.S. intelligence discovered that this compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan, was owned by a man believed to be Bin Laden's main courier of his messages to the outside world. It was a solid lead.
It's discussed with very few people. It has a code name. Normal communications channels aren't used. Normal meetings are not used.
ABC News consultant Richard Clark was a senior counterterrorism official under 3 presidents and a man who battled Bin Laden for years from inside the White House.
What they were drawing on was an analytical lead that they had been looking for years, which was the Achilles heel, the couriers. Because he was no longer using the phone, because he was no longer using the internet, he had to rely on couriers. Find the couriers.
They had, and as they scrutinized this 1-acre compound using satellite and on-the-ground observations, more key clues. There were no telephone or internet connections. The residents burned their own trash rather than have it picked up.
If we have actionable intelligence about high-value terrorist targets and President Musharraf will not act, we will.
That was candidate Obama. Being president is a lot harder. And in March of this year, President Obama was told about the Abbottabad compound.
But you're asking him to risk a lot. And he's going to ask every imaginable question, and how confident you are, and how do you know that, and what's behind that, and what if that's wrong? He really does 20 questions with people.
But there was enough to start planning. Obama rejected a plan to bomb the compound, in part because it would leave no evidence, and so special forces were called in.
Hell yeah, you're afraid. I wouldn't want to go into battle with somebody who wasn't a little bit afraid. The difference is being with a warrior who can control and channel that fear and still get the job done.
Howard Wasden is a former Navy SEAL. He was wounded in the Black Hawk Down Battle of Mogadishu, serving with SEAL Team 6, the same unit that carried out the Bin Laden operation. Over the past several weeks, the SEALs built a full-scale replica of the Abbottabad compound and carried out 2 drills on it.
That's Tactics 101. And if you don't have time to build a compound, what we'll typically do is do what's called a string house. You know, just lay out the floors with strings and pegs. That's if you got to do a really quick op. But if you've got plenty of time and it seems like they had months here, then yeah, then let's get the thing built as close to replicating the actual target house as possible, and get everybody ready to do the op.
Last Friday morning, President Obama, with no sighting of bin Laden still, with some members of his team urging him to hold off or go with the bombing operation, ordered the SEALs in, saying it's a go.
It's a very lonely place to be. The decision at the end, even though you have all the advisors around you, the decision is yours. And you are taking a decision that you know is going to result in people dying, even if it goes well.
Weather held up the operation for one day, and the president attended the White House Correspondents Association dinner.
People think bin Laden is hiding in the Hindu Kush, but did you know that every day from 4 to 5 he hosts a show on C-SPAN?
Then, Sunday, the SEALs headed in.
What's going through your mind and what that's like is one simple thing. You're not thinking about personal glory. You're not thinking about getting home to mama and the kids. You're thinking about your time on target, your individual jobs on target, getting in, taking care of your business, and getting you and your teammates out alive.
There were 30 to 40 men in the darkness choppering into the compound. The plan was to rappel from the helicopters, but one of the Black Hawks stalled, had to put down outside the walls.
All plans go out the window the minute the first round is fired anyway, so you've just got to pick up what you've got and drive on and try to complete the mission.
Back at the White House, the president and his team were following the operation in real time, audio and video feeds from the compound. Their faces say everything.
It was probably one of the most anxiety-filled periods of time, I think, in the lives of the people who were assembled here yesterday. The minutes passed like days.
When you're hearing the blow-by-blow and you don't fully understand it, and you know that there are lives on the line, it's the most nerve-wracking thing you can imagine.
In Abbottabad, the SEALs climbed the stairs to the upper floors and confronted a man they were convinced was bin Laden. They shouted for him to surrender. He resisted, and so they took him down. One shot just above the left eye, the other to the chest. They took his body, swept the house for evidence, and left. The word went back to the White House, Geronimo KIA, using the code word for bin Laden. Later, DNA tests, facial recognition techniques, and other methods confirmed they had killed Osama bin Laden. We got him, President Obama said. He was buried at sea a few hours later in accordance with Muslim practices. And it was over. American heroes had revenged the worst attack on this country in American history and brought to an end a decade-long pursuit of the most wanted man in the world. An incredible mission accomplished. Many people imagined over the years that Osama bin Laden was living in rugged secrecy up in the wilds of Pakistan's frontiers. But in fact, bin Laden was living with his family members behind the tall privacy walls of a huge compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Nick Schifrin is there. Nick?
Terry, I think for years we've been talking about which cave bin Laden was hiding in. But as one U.S. official has put it today, bin Laden was hiding in plain sight. And you can see this town where he was hiding. This is a middle-class neighborhood, and this is the road that leads to his compound. People on this road live relatively well. This is a middle-class neighborhood. It's also a tourist neighborhood where people from all over Pakistan would come to enjoy the beauty here. But most importantly, perhaps, this is a military neighborhood. A few thousand feet from me is the bin Laden compound, and about 500 or 600 feet away from that is a Pakistani army base, actually something that is basically Pakistan's West Point, a Pakistan military academy. And there's a lot of questions today about how close bin Laden's compound was to that army base, why they didn't know, as they say, why bin Laden was living there.
Bin Laden's last hometown then, and what has been the reaction there on the ground to the fact that the United States of America sent in Navy SEALs to kill their neighbor?
I think also that goes to the kind of moderation in this town to the south of here, closer to the Afghan border. There were some protests, but here there has not been a lot of protests. There's not a lot of anti-Americanism here. There's not a lot of sentiment against the Pakistani government. What we've seen in the dozens of people we've talked to is shock, is surprise, shock that the Pakistani military, that base just behind me, didn't know that bin Laden was staying, and shock that most people, most residents here, didn't know he was here either. Terry?
All right, Nick Schifrin, one of the first American reporters on the scene there. Thanks very much for that report from Abbottabad.